1 minute, 23 seconds before the crash. The KLM completes its 180-degree turn at the end of the runway.
The KLM 4805 is now ready for takeoff, and we're waiting for our ATC clearance.
This is not a request for takeoff clearance, but a request for air traffic control clearance. The pilots are seeking directions for once they're airborne. The controller issues the ATC clearance, and the KLM co-pilot reads it back. 33 seconds before the collision. The tapes reveal that after reading back his ATC clearance, the KLM co-pilot makes an unusual statement.
We're now at takeoff.
American investigator Bill Edmonds is puzzled by what he heard.
We couldn't understand exactly whether he was saying we are at takeoff or we are taking off.
28 seconds. The Spanish air traffic controller also seems confused by what the KLM co-pilot has just said.
Okay, stand by for takeoff. I will call you.
Stand by is the last instruction from the tower to the KLM. The Pan Am pilots had not followed their instructions either. 4 minutes before the crash. The control tower instructs the Pan Am to turn off the runway at the third exit. But investigators now know that the planes collided further up the runway, near the fourth exit. Los Rodeos is a small airport with just one airstrip and a taxiway at the side. There are 4 access lanes between the taxiway and the runway. Four minutes and 46 seconds before impact. The Pan Am follows the KLM onto the runway. They taxi down the runway. They look out of the window to try to count the turnings as they go past them. First, C1. And then C2. The problem is the third exit, C3. However, the tower tapes clearly demonstrate the controller's instructions.
Would you confirm that you want the Clipper 1736 to turn left at the third intersection?
The third one, sir. 1, 2, 3, third one.
1 minute, 6 seconds to disaster. The Pan Am passes exit C3, but exit C3 would have required the Jumbo to make a very difficult turn at an acute angle. The American investigators believe it was a practical impossibility. 35 seconds to go. The KLM co-pilot tells control.
We're now at takeoff.
Immediately, the Pan Am co-pilot butts into the conversation.
We're still taxiing down the runway, the Clipper 1736.
Inside the KLM, the pilot and crew are getting all radio transmissions. They should hear that the Pan Am Jumbo is still on the runway ahead of them. But Captain Van Zanten, the most experienced pilot in the Dutch fleet, increases the thrust of his engines. 18 seconds before the crash. Captain Van Zanten thrusts his engines into full power. 2 other crew members are sharing the controls. Why didn't they stop him? In the KLM cockpit, the crew didn't hear certain directions that were clearly audible on the control tower tapes. Just when Captain Van Zanten most needed his radio communications, a loud squeal obliterated vital messages.
Papa for 1736 report.
The communication system in use at Los Rodeos in 1977 is still used all around the world today. Airplanes communicate with air traffic control using 2-way VHF radios. All the planes at the airport tune into the same frequency, so that not only can they receive their instructions, they can also hear what's going on around them. But the system has limitations. Only one person can speak on that frequency at a time. Everyone must wait their turn. A problem occurs when two or more people try to use the frequency at the same time. It causes a loud, noisy squeal, known as a heterodyne. 67 seconds before impact. Captain Van Zanten has completed his difficult 180-degree turn at the end of the runway. The flight data recorder reveals that he opens the throttle. The cockpit voice recorder reveals that the co-pilot is alarmed.
Wait a minute, we don't have an ATC clearance.
Captain Van Zanten's reply is curt.
No, I know that, but go ahead, ask.
44 seconds before impact. While the KLM co-pilot is reading back the ATC clearance to the controller, the data recorder reveals that Van Zanten has already begun to accelerate. He doesn't wait for the co-pilot to finish. 37 seconds.
We're going.
But the Pan Am Jumbo is still taxiing on the runway. From the tower tapes, investigators know the controller told the KLM plane to wait for takeoff clearance.
Okay, stand by for takeoff. I will call you.
At that exact moment, the Pan Am cockpit tapes reveal that the Pan Am crew also respond.
We're still taxiing down the runway, the Clipper 1736.
They're both responding at the same time. But the KLM cockpit tape reveals that because both Pan Am and the controller speak at the same time, it creates a heterodyne.
Okay.
Captain Van Zanten simply hears the word, okay. He doesn't hear the controller,
Okay, stand by for takeoff. I will call you.
nor does he hear the Pan Am.
We're still taxiing down the runway, the Clipper 1736.
He continues accelerating down the runway. Just 28 seconds later, the KLM Jumbo smashes into the Pan Am. "24 seconds before the crash. The Spanish controller makes a second call to Pan Am about its status on the runway.
Papa Alpha 1736. Report runway clear.
The Pan Am co-pilot responds.
Okay, we'll report when we're clear.
This conversation was definitely audible in the KLM cockpit, but only one member of the crew was aware of it.
The Pan Am, is he not clear?
What do you say?
The Pan Am, is he not clear?
The flight engineer was the most junior member of the crew.
Pan Am, is he not clear?
Dismissed by his highly respected captain, he doesn't question him further. Just seconds before he slammed into Pan Am, Captain Van Zanten tried to lift the KLM plane over the top of it. He pulled the nose up so sharply that the tail scraped the runway. He nearly made it. The nose and front wheel cleared the Pan Am, but the Jumbo still couldn't climb high enough. The KLM's #1 engine only had to graze the tip of Pan Am's right side to bring catastrophe. The disaster at Tenerife was caused by a chain of events combining both human error and technical failure. First, the air traffic controllers instructed two 747s to taxi onto the same active runway at the same time. Then, in heavy fog and confused by the runway layout, the Pan Am pilot missed his exit and taxied too far. Just seconds later, Dutch pilot Captain Van Zanten began his takeoff without clearance. Finally, a loud squeal in the KLM cockpit prevented the captain from receiving vital messages which may have stopped him in his tracks.